Thank you.
Talks between the U.S. and North Korea and the U.S. and China look to be on a collision course. President Donald Trump is set to have his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on February 27th and 28th. Meanwhile, the truce in the ongoing trade war between the United States and China is set to expire at the beginning of March. Now, those following the talks say China can use the upcoming talks with North Korea to gain leverage. To unpack this, we have to bring in former official in the United States Trade Representative's office, Steve Gill. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thanks, Scotty.
Okay, so President Trump did announce in his State of the Union, one of the only new information that we learned from a State of the Union was that he is going to have an upcoming trip to Vietnam for the summit with Kim Jong-un. Now, do you think they should piggy this back into trade negotiations with China because of the timing?
I think they may get some progress before we get to that point. You have the top officials at the U.S. Trade Representative's office, as well as the representatives from China, who are already setting times to meet before President Xi and President Trump can have the opportunity to meet. Keep in mind that President Xi and President Trump were going to meet in Davos, Switzerland during the World Economic Summit, and then the shutdown of the U.S. government pushed that off. So while he's in the neighborhood, it might make sense to do a stop by and find some other place to have this high-level meeting between the two presidents to try and get this trade war resulted sooner rather than later. It is approaching that date in March when this deadline looms, and I think both sides probably want to get an answer before we get there.
Absolutely. So the president has been adamant that there is going to be no trade deal with China without him negotiating directly with President Xi. So why is that aspect, do you think, so important to him? And is the president the best negotiator with his administration you've seen?
Well, I think President Trump believes he's the best negotiator in his administration, and as long as he believes that he's going to be the guy that's going to be taking the front line of trying to work this to a final deal. I think you are starting to see progress, though, of the top officials in both China and the U.S. getting closer to a deal where it's just that sort of final push that President Trump's personality may be enough to get over the edge. And I think President Xi kind of has the same attitude. Both of these men like to believe they're the ones that being in the room when the deal's made is important to each of them, and that may be what it takes to get the deal. You know, when I was lawyering full-time, a lot of times I would want to make sure that my client was dealing directly with the other principal on the other side, because sometimes you can get a deal easier than when you've got a lot of other people or lawyers that seem to be throwing more roadblocks into an actual deal. And this may be the case here, where if the principals, Trump and Xi, get together, they may be able to make advancements man-to-man that they won't get with other people representing them on their behalf.
Well, obviously, we have two different roads that are kind of what we say colliding, and that could be a positive collision in the fact that you do have this issue with China, and now you've got North Korea. Do you think the President Trump purposely has put this together on the same table, knowing what a big impact China does have on North Korea?
Well, the Chinese impact on North Korea has been there from the beginning. One of the reasons that we've seen Kim Jong-un back up from some of what he was doing early is because the U.S. was able to put some pressure on China. But even with your former story, between the Venezuelan oil and the China impact there, between the North Korean nuclear development and the role of China there, and then this trade war between the U.S., it's almost a triple bank shot, and it seems like all three of these are coming together at the same time.
Well, it's interesting that they are coming together and the timing of this, which means they could either be really good or really bad. That being said, what do you think is going to be the best way to make sure that it's a positive outcome from all of these meetings at the end of the month?
I think China and the U.S. will announce that they have reached a good deal, even if they don't get everything done. The really complex things that are holding up a deal at this point from the U.S. standpoint are getting U.S. services into China, whether it's financial service, insurance services, other service industries into China, and at the same time protecting intellectual property and stopping what the Chinese have been doing, which has been making U.S. companies partner and reveal their trade secrets in order to get into that 1.5 billion person market in China. Those are still big issues. And I don't know that they're much closer than they were a few weeks ago to resolving those. But without a seat at the table, it's going to be hard for anybody to know what's actually coming to fruition at the end. I suspect that we will get more products into China. I suspect the tariffs here will be lowered. The question is how much protection of intellectual property, how much access to the Chinese market for U.S. service companies will result at the end of the deal, although I expect everybody to declare victory no matter what comes out.
Do you actually think there's going to be an extra place setting for Xi Jinping at the North Korea summit meeting? Do you think he's going to be a surprise guest and that's where this is all going to get done? Or do you think it'll be a separate trip?
You know, if he's not there at the table, his presence will be felt. Again, the influence that China has on whatever ultimate resolution is with North Korea, it's not going to be resolved unless China kind of gives them a thumbs up. And I think China's looking for a way to ratchet things down in the North Korea-U.S. relationship. South Korea, a booming economy in that region helps everybody.
Well, Steve, you always get a thumbs up for me for joining us on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.